I would like that.
Awesome. Perfect. Let's do it. This is a hard one, by the way. Did it feel hard?
Yes.
It felt hard to me when I sat down to do it. I don't know what year I actually gave this as the exam, but I don't imagine I was very popular that year. It was rough. Okay, so let's start. We can all just put our mics on. I think it's just a few of us here and just sort of chat it out together. Step one, anytime you get a question like this on the exam, there are only two things I could possibly be testing you on. So step one, do you see a fundamental right issue or an equal protection issue or both? And if both, is there one that's more major and minor? So anyone jump in? Yeah, Juanita.
I'm thinking equal protection because same-sex couples will not be able to procreate.
The official statute says that it's broadly defined so as to include de facto adoption and reproductive technologies. But what else? What do other folks see? We'll take it one by one. Does it infringe on fundamental rights?
Well, could I try again?
Of course.
If procreation is a fundamental right, I think, and if you're told that you have to do it, that seems like an infringement.
Absolutely. Good. Perfect. So we're back at Griswold. And it is slightly a classification, but it's not a super rigorous classification for us to look at. Generally speaking, if we're looking for a classification in our course, we're more likely to look for a classification on the basis of race, gender, or legitimacy. So the big equal protection issue that we're going to develop later in the course is when we get to parentage, a whole history of laws that treated people differently on the basis of marital status. So children, the bastard laws, children born out of marriage, and a whole legal regime that stigmatized non-marital children. So for us, it would be race, gender, and non-marital children. And this doesn't, in the end, you're right to stop and pause as to whether it raises issues for same-sex couples. And if it did, then we have a really fun and interesting question about whether same-sex couples get heightened scrutiny or not. But the big issue that Lita points out beautifully is that this is an infringement on a couple's right or an individual's right to direct their procreative choices. Perfect. So fundamental right, what is the first step we ask in a fundamental rights analysis is what is the government's objectives? Anybody, so why did the government here do what it did? What good thing did it think it was helping? Drew?
Is that the promoting the procreation and rearing of two consenting adults? Is that like where they thought that they were, I don't know, supporting that?
That's exactly right. And child rearing in the context of marriage. And the legislature here is clear to say marriage of any gender, but in the context of marriage. So all you have to do to get these points is just extract. Why did the government do what it said it was doing? Next, is that a compelling government interest? In our fundamental rights analysis, we need to say if it's compelling. All three of us together, is it compelling government interest to...
No.
No.
I don't know. You don't think it's a compelling government interest to raise children in a stable environment in the context of marriage?
Oh, okay. I guess that could be, but
well,
the means weren't good.
There's definitely at least a counter argument. It's tricky here because in most of the circumstances, the way the court does the thing goes way overboard. You would and don't worry about getting the answer right. Worry about making the competing arguments. The government will always argue that there is a compelling interest in this, and all you have to do to get your exam point is cite to what I tell you. So I told you the committee heard data from social scientists, economists, and psychologists describing how parenting within marriage is the most productive and stable way to raise children. So a little bit of this is just pulling the content that I give you and putting it in the test properly. So the government would say, whether we agree or not, the government would say that it is compelling because social scientists, economists, and psychologists describe this. The petitioners will always argue that the interests are not compelling to do what the government has said it's going to do. So that's step one. And in the end, this is going to swiftly fail on step two either way. So whether it falls on both 1 and 2 or just 2, you'll see and watch this as we move forward throughout the course, because you'll see lots of courts saying, oh, hell, let's just assume it's compelling and let's really get at whether the means chosen are narrowly tailored. And a lot of courts punt on because a lot of these involve values and a question of whether, this is how the state should be regulating and this kind of like moral judgment. And so you'll see a lot of courts just punt and say, the government says it's compelling, let's just take it at its word and let's move on to the next element where it's going to fail. Next, in our methodologies, the next thing we look at is whether the means chosen by the government to achieve that compelling government purpose are narrowly tailored. So I think it's helpful if you're making a flowchart to stop here and say explicitly, what means did the government adopt to do what it's doing? What does the statute actually say? Anybody? Drew, do you want to take that one? So what is the government telling people to actually do? It's super straightforward. Let's make sure we extract it nonetheless. Or Dimitri.
Sign an affidavit.
They have to fill an affidavit saying what? Sorry, I called on 2 people at once now.
You got it, Dimitri.
What's in italics right here? So the exclusive purpose of this marital union is to procreate or raise children.
Good. And if you can't do that, what will happen?
Oh, if you can't procreate?
Or if you won't sign the affidavit saying that your purpose of your union is procreate, what would be the result?
After 5 years of marriage, one of the parties.
Anita?
Will you be able to marry? I guess you won't be able to marry.
Good. And so what does that do? What did we just issue spot now?
Another fundamental right.
Beautiful. You see how it's kind of tucked in here? Every one of the questions I give, I think my exam is split in 2. I think the bread and butter, 80% of the exam is super straightforward with no tricks or hidden, red herrings. And the comma question, I think, is always tricky and it requires a real rigorous eye to make sure we see it all. So if you follow these methodologies, you'll really help make sure. And so I think one of the most effective techniques to make sure you answer the question successfully is when you get to that moment where it says, what means has the government chosen? You actually take the time to say explicitly what the legislature did, because almost every exam you will see something that you missed in your first read. Because your first read, you just want to get started, time pressures are real. You look for the thing that just jumps off the page, but the A answer always has something else built in there that only some of the class is going to see. So great. So we didn't see it at first, but now we've added it in. Drew.
I'll raise my hand for something else.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, no. And there's only 3 of us. Nobody has to raise their hand. Just shout. Perfect. So we handled step one. We found a compelling government purpose, or we at least set it aside for now and moved forward. Now we've identified what means the government has chosen to achieve these compelling purposes. And the question now is, are those means narrowly tailored? And one way to think about that is to look for examples where the law goes too far in achieving the stated purpose, or examples where the law doesn't go far enough. So let's talk that out. What are some ways in which this law is poorly drafted, right? Overreaches or underreaches to achieve the state's compelling purpose?
Because they're pretty much saying that you can't get married unless you're going to have kids.
Good. Like the outcomes, I mean, that's insane. Every exam that you'll read of mine, you can just assume they're all unconstitutional. It's really just an effort to show why, using rigorous methodologies, don't quibble too much. They're all wildly unconstitutional. But yeah, the idea that when you can't marry, or to tell someone that the entire purpose of their marriage has to be for this one thing, is utterly absurd. And of course, it's only going to sweep in people who are heading into marriage without regard to people who are already married. And it doesn't do anything to address people, who are not married, who are procreating. What else? What are some other gaps where it's over or under inclusive?
Is it also as well because it's alienating same-sex couples that aren't able to procreate?
It could be. It's actually pretty inclusive of same-sex couples. It tries to be, and because it's definitely acknowledging that it's not just procreate in a traditional sense. If you would accept child rearing in any sense, perfect background track to talk about child rearing.
Sorry.
That was perfect. Any other examples, like who's in or who's out? Think about age. Think about second marriages. Think about other ways in which this is just way too poorly drafted.
Oh yeah, like you said, so someone who's not able because of their age, so they wouldn't be able to. Elderly people. What was I thinking? Because we talked about something last class where I forgot what I was going to say.
Good, but that's so one great example is it's talking about how parenting should occur in the most stable way to raise children, but it doesn't do anything to address marital age. So you've got lots of people marrying later in life. There's no way social science or economists would say that that's the most stable way to raise children. There's all sorts of health issues. Another argument might make.
Sorry, he just woke up from his nap. He fell asleep in the middle of the class.
Oh, I'm offended. So another way we might think about it is, what about single parents whose marriage you might be now rearing children in a new marriage. Actually, that wouldn't work because raising children, that would still work. But anyway, there's plenty of examples though where this law is not promoting the overall broad health or wellness of the children. So it's not narrowly tailored. Next, let's talk about amendments. The A answer to this question on the exam has to address this. It says somewhere in here, I think, if it didn't here, most of my exams explicitly tell you to look for ways to save the law or defend the law if it could be defended. So what are some ways that we could rewrite this law that would not run foul of the right to procreate or the right to marriage? What could the state do instead?
Could they incentivize people to procreate and not make them sign a sworn affidavit saying that they would?
Beautiful. Good. Right. We can do all sorts of things to nudge and lure people. We give all sorts of tax benefits. We give all sorts of benefits, or we can give benefits like Family Medical Leave Act and things like that to support child rearing and to support child raising. But that's very different than saying that in order to support one fundamental right, we're going to infringe on your right to marry. That is infringing on the right to privacy through marriage and procreation. Last question, and then the last question through to answer is, what cases would you want to ensure? We haven't talked about case law. And I think there's two really that are much right for the example.
I don't have my stuff in front of me. Would Loving, is that the first one where they talked about the right to marry who you wanted? That was with Loving's?
Good. So for the proposition that the right to marry is fundamental and can't be infringed upon without a good reason, you could definitely cite Loving plus the Blocky plus Turner, that trilogy. What else?
Obergefell.
Did you say Obergefell?
Yeah, the reason why I say that is just because the name sticks out in my head.
And I think Obergefell gets cited. I actually think Obergefell is critical to cite because it talks about the dignity of family recognition and the importance of recognizing the dignity of family interest. That's actually, in a weird way, the Obergefell case might be cited for the conservative position that this is narrowly tailored, or it is a compelling government purpose, because the language in Obergefell is so conservative on family formation. The court in Obergefell is very much lifting up a specific kind of family, particularly the marital family. So it might actually be cited notably not for its more liberal understanding as a victory for LGBT couples, but more as a conservative statement on raising children in the context of marriage. And then finally, Lawrence might also be cited for that sort of liberal view of privacy as the right to make decisions to be intimate with who you want, and for the government to sort of stay out of it entirely. But the key reason I bring up the cases is what you should expect on the exam is that there will be something of a cluster, I'll call it, of cases, or a pod, or a sort of cohort of cases that you'll definitely want to cite. So here, you can also maybe cite Griswold for the idea, or Eisenstadt for the idea that the decision to raise, whether to bear or beget a child is a fundamental right. But look in the exam, follow the methodology that I'm following for step 1, whether the government's interests are compelling, and step 2, whether its means are narrowly tailored. But then also, if you made a list, we've covered top 12 cases, and every exam question has 3 or 4 that map really nicely. There's the abortion cluster of cases, there's the marriage cluster of cases, there's contraception clusters, but just sort of think about them all and make sure on the exam that you cite to some of those cases that are most appropriate for the question. So that's my practice exam. How do you feel? You want to do another one, like another session? You guys starting to feel more comfortable gradually? Where are you at? Actually, let me stop the review. Let's just chat. Okay, go on.
I would love to do another one in another session. I think just take what I learned here and then apply it to that one. Also, with those clusters, how do you want us to throw those in there? So say the court would cite this, and this for the fundamental right to marry, or...
Yeah, so I think it's harder to write an exam question for students to write an exam common law answer by saying what the court will cite. I think it's easier for you to approach your exam writing by what the petitioners would cite and what the government would cite. So I think Drew's list of cases, Loving, Zablocki, and Turner, are what the petitioners would cite, maybe with Griswold or Lawrence as well. And ironically, I actually think the government would cite Obergefell for this more conservative read of what the state should be regulating. But yeah, so I would encourage you, if you're moving toward exam prep material, I think that you want a flow chart for how to answer any question for fundamental right or equal protection. And I would do a case chart. Here are all the cases. Here's a short summary of the facts. Here's some clarity about whether it's equal protection or fundamental rights. Here's the court's holding. Here's the like, and you can just sort of like blend down the list. Should I cite Loving? Should I cite Zawacki? Should I cite Lawrence? And just look at the whole list all together.
So when you say cite a case,
sorry. Shout out.
Hello.
Yeah, sorry.
If we cite a case, you want us to quote something from the case?
No, definitely do whatever you've been doing on other exams before. Just give it a shout out or a reference. So nothing formal. Let's just say, relying on, whole women's health, the court will apply the undue burden standard. But just a shout out is plenty.
Okay.
Yeah, don't be too formal.
Awesome. I would like to. I agree with Demetri. I'd like to do another problem one day if we could, because I am more familiar now than I was 2 weeks ago with it, but I'm still way away from exam readiness with it. That's my fault. I haven't gone back to really hammer it down because I've been just doing everything else for the class. So I need to go back and really. I feel comfortable with more comfortable with other stuff like equal distribution and things like that. So I think we need to go back and really before the next because I didn't do this problem when you started talking about it. So because I know we had changed what we were originally going to do, so I didn't do it at first. Do another one and try and, like you said, get a flow chart and hammer away before the next one, so I can maybe refine it better.
That's awesome. I'm going to give it a couple more weeks because in the next couple weeks, a bunch of the cases keep practicing. In the custody cases, it's in the child support cases, it's everywhere. But what I'll do is maybe maybe not next week, but the week after, I'll do the same thing. I mean, I'll do it before next time instead. It's likewise like a just a run through of an old exam. I just think, and I have a bunch of them posted, and you'll just get, they're all the same. Every single one of them. I love how we found the marriage issue only by going through that methodology, because every single exam has some tipping point of where students excel and where students, sort of get it done, but miss some of the greater complexities of it.
Thank you for the review.
Yeah, no, it's great. And the other thing I'll say for exam purposes is the way the math shakes out with 36 minutes to answer a common law question if you're doing like 20% of your time. So you should also assume that there's more that you would want to say. So make sure if you see a question that has both equal protection and fundamental rights, you start with the one that is the bread and butter of it all. And just make sure you manage your time like that funnel I always teach, where you do your really great work on the most important part and then allow yourself to fizzle and rush at the end. I personally encourage the exam is given to you with the common law question first and the bread and butter family law question second. If you're someone who loves common law and you're someone who could write all day about common law, or just find it stressful for the opposite reasons, I actually suggest people do the common law question last when you're just running out of time, because I worry that a lot of people spend more time than before on that question.
Gotcha.
I think it's
Thank you very much.
It's good to see you guys. I'll see you next Thursday.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. See you.
I'll schedule one more, at least one more. Just to sort of debrief like this with a new question.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It's great to see you guys. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Sure.